The slides will obviously be on there, as will the Q&A session. So the questions and answers will be recorded and saved, and you'll be able to access this on the Southeast LEP's website and also YouTube. So for these presenters, it could be their first or their ongoing YouTube stardom, which I'm sure they'll really enjoy. So this, if people couldn't access it, you will be able to access this later. Jim and the Southeast LEP team, in particular Jim Wilkinson, who we'll be hearing from later, will be sharing those links. So if you can't stay for the whole thing, which we very much hope you can do, you will be able to access this later on. It will be recorded, yes, on YouTube and on the Southeast LEP's website. You will notice, if we've just discussed, if you've just joined us, then welcome. It's a slightly different setup today. You won't be able to see every single participant. You will see the different panelists, but not while the slide is being shared. So for now, you might just be looking at me in a blue background. Welcome everyone, I'm Alison. I work for the FSB, I cover Kent and Medway, and I'm pleased to be co-chair, along with Melissa from Pfizer, of the Southeast DSP, Digital Skills Partnership. So we're really pleased to have you all here today to give you an update on all of the progress so far. We've mentioned the DSP, the Q&A. We're going to be full of acronyms, but we'll be talking them through. We've mentioned the Q&A. Please do use that as much as you can. Just a little reminder, really, where are we now and where have we come to? What have we achieved? That's what we're going to be looking at today. So the DSP, we are just one of 6 trailblazers across the UK. So we are very proud to be a part of this initiative, which probably is being watched quite well from government, to seeing what progress we're making and what more we can do and what impact we're making on the digital skills across the whole of the South East. We have been drawn together. We've been brought together as volunteers. We're all volunteers in this particular situation today, apart from Jim, I would say, and Louise, who you'll hear from later. And really what our aim is, in a nutshell, bearing in mind we're covering such an enormous geographical region with a really ambitious sort of targets, we want to draw together interested parties. So that's all of you here today, online and listening in. We want to drive activity in different formats and different groups and in different ways. And we want to share these positive actions, not only across the South East, but amongst the other DSPs nationwide and with government, so that we can really prove we are improving digital skills in the South East in a whole range of different groups and sectors. So nearly 150 businesses and organisations came forward when Jim and the DSP said, do you want to get involved and do you want to be engaged? And we're really pleased with that level of interest and the breadth and depth of interest and experience that we've got behind us. And today we're just seeing, a good amount of those, 64 participants across all of these sort of different areas that we're going to be talking about today. As we can all imagine, here we are in all of our different background settings and all of our different home style offices or quiet offices, as if we've managed to get into a business environment. The coronavirus pandemic and this lockdown has actually put digital skills partnerships and that need for that digital boost into even starker highlight, really. We know exactly the need for good broadband. We know we need to be able to act on this and learn from it really quickly. And I'm sure loads of us have gone through a massive 3-month digital skills improvement just out of sheer necessity. So really, it's emphasised even more so what we can do and what we need to do going forwards. It's a big, ambitious task we've got all ahead of us. So having those 150 volunteers is fantastic. And Jim has very carefully managed to spread the word. He's distributing the how we're going to do this. So we've broken that down into 5 sort of different working groups, and we're going to be hearing from all of them this afternoon. We've got these group leaders now. Some of them have picked up and they've run with it in different ways. Others are carefully cradling the ball and moving it between themselves and talking to one another in different ways. We'll be operating at different speeds because we need to understand what those needs are in those different working groups. So don't worry if you've said you want to get involved and you don't feel that actually you've done enough yet. These opportunities will absolutely be forthcoming over the next few weeks and months. For those groups that are slightly steps ahead of others, I said beforehand, it felt like we were sort of horses in a trap waiting to start this meeting. We're all together in all of this and we will operate at different speeds and have different results. But for now, we're really super pleased with the engagement and the interaction that we've got from all of you so far. that drawing together element that I mentioned, we are certainly making really good progress on that drawing together section, which is our first sort of key point. So I mentioned those working groups that Jim split us into. We'd love to do a poll now. We've got Amy who's helping us out from the South East LEP. If you can all please, all the attendees on this call, if you can have a look at this question here. These are our 5 key priorities and these are shaping our 5 working groups. Can you select which one do you currently feel actually now, bearing in mind where we are, which is the most pressing to you? Could be your personal opinion, your business opinion, your education sector, your background. So I can't vote on this, but I'll have my own personal thoughts on this. And our panelists can't vote on it. So if you can all just hit one of those buttons, which one really do you think is the most pressing for you at the moment? Is it the small and medium businesses and the charity sector? Is it supporting educators and students? You can read this as much as I can, but is it about preventing digital exclusion and making sure we don't leave people behind in this? Is it about making sure that education and industry alignment is strong and solid so that the students leaving schools are well prepared for the world of work? Is it the development of a regional digital skills prospectus? So we would love to see your votes on this, please. This will be using, I think we'd like to use this as our working group just to kind of keep tabs on where we are. What is the most important? Which should we really focus our time and energy on? In particular, bearing in mind the situation that we find ourselves now and the challenges that we're facing coming ahead. So once Amy has seen that we've had at least sort of 40 or 50 responses for that, we will see the results, I think, once she's had a little jiggery pokery. There we go. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. You should be able to see those results yourself as well. So preventing digital exclusion comes out top at 37%. Closely followed by the alignment between education and industry. There's been a lot in the news, hasn't there, about what happens with that next tranche of students, whichever level they might be, leaving education sector and moving into work. That's really interesting, and that will absolutely help us moving forwards and putting our focus in the right areas. I think the last thing to say is we're really pleased to have you on board. Do stay for as long as you can for the session. Use the Q&As, use the hashtag DSPSE. Yes, use the hashtag where you can. We'll be on Twitter, social media. This will be on YouTube and on the Southeast LEP. We would love now to hand over to Louise, who's going to be talking about the funding that we've got and also about how we can take part in allocating that funding into the right sectors. So thanks once again and enjoy your session.
Thanks very much, Alison. Great to be here. I'm the skills lead at the South East Local Enterprise Partnership. I wrote the original bid to be a digital skills partnership area, so it's particularly great to be here today with so many people engaging, and we've got such a full agenda of action and progress ahead of us. Just wanted to note a big thank you to Alison and Melissa for doing a sterling job as our co-chairs, and to all of our working group leads. We're really grateful. As Alison rightly said, Jim and I are the only ones that aren't actually volunteers, so we really appreciate all of your hard work, and not least to thank Jim, who's doing a really good job of bringing everybody together. So I'm happy to share the good news that the LEP board recently approved a £2 million pot for skills and a £2.4 million pot for SMEs to respond to COVID-19. So this digital skills partnership is a key part of informing priorities for that funding. So today's conversations and other conversations we have will really inform that. You're a key part of our consultation, basically. We've already consulted with our skills advisory panel and they've already highlighted the importance of digital, so I think you can be sure that digital will be a key theme. The LEP board have also committed a further £1 million sector support fund for SELEP working groups to apply to, and that also offers more opportunities. So some good news about funding opportunities. The next steps for that funding are being agreed, and as soon as we can, we'll share the detail with you. We'll be looking to act pretty swiftly because obviously this is a COVID response fund, and it will be signed off by our main LEP board. So please do engage with us and feed in, and as I said, we'll take some of today's feedback. just more generally to let you know that this partnership is seen by us as a LEP as key and central to our COVID-19 response. It's really kind of a core part of how we're going forward, and I think it's really come to the fore, and we've seen engagement just really ramp up in the last kind of couple of months, which is fantastic. We regularly cite this partnership to government and to ministers. It's really important, and we're also speaking to government about related pots of money such as the National Retraining Scheme. So where we're considering our own funding, we'll be ensuring that we don't duplicate and that we take advantage of whatever there is nationally. I'm also happy to update you that we're planning a joint conference for our Skills Advisory Panel, which is our employer-led panel. Some joint members of this forum as well, but that will be a joint event with the Digital Skills Partnership. It will be a virtual conference, this is very fitting obviously, on the 8th of October, so a date for your diaries. And that will include progress from this group, from the Digital Skills Partnership, but also use it as an opportunity to get feedback from the kind of wider world on issues such as digital need going forward and improving digital inclusion. Digital inclusion has really come to the fore, and really interested to see that poll, that is a huge priority area, and we've always seen that as a key part of the Digital Skills Partnership mission. So without further ado, I won't take up any more time, and I'll hand over to Jim.
Thanks, Louise. So I suppose from my point of view, and it's probably valuable in terms of the people that are attending today, just to explain where I fit in the context of these great and good people in front of you. So Alison mentioned about the support from DCMS, the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. It's important to say that we receive funding to employ a coordinator in our region. And as Alison says, we're one of 6. And my role really is, I guess, a lot of the back office stuff, really. It's the admin behind getting these working groups together, looking for people like yourselves to come forward and engage with us as a partnership. The other bit about it is doing the donkey work on behalf of all these panellists. And it's normally a pleasure, never a bind. But you know, apologies to any donkeys on the line if that's offensive. But yeah, so I'm doing the back office stuff, the admin stuff for the partnership. I'd be the contact point through which you might wish to raise questions of the partnership, get in touch with leads or our chairs, of course, and we'll always come back to you swiftly and shortly and in good time. Louise has talked about the importance of the partnership to the LEP and around funding. And obviously the news in the last week or so has been really great. And again, as has been alluded, we'll be part of that decision or helping to influence how that funding comes down and goes out. But from the point of view of DCMS, we were going to have Gary Coyle, who leads DCMS for Digital Skills Partnerships, but unfortunately he's been very unwell. But what he did want me to share really is that digital skills partnerships remain high on the agenda for central government in terms of this big, wide-ranging issue. There are ongoing discussions between government partners about, particularly around support to SMEs and charities, which obviously is one of the themes for this partnership. And I'm sure there'll be news over the next few weeks or days even about that kind of area, but also about broader digital inclusion. And again, you'll be hearing from Rona and from Will on that subject, and even around schools. So DCMS are right behind this as a concept, these people as partners, and you all as wider stakeholders. And what we're looking to have is the DSP becomes a sustainable, self-sustaining part, an important part of the CELEP infrastructure over the next sort of 2 years. And with these people around the table, I'm certain that that will be the case. So just going back to Louise's words and moving on to a second poll question from our point of view. So bearing in mind how important the Digital Skills Partnership will become and will be as part of those discussions, I'll ask Amy to share this second question if she can. There you go. If I could ask you to answer that by clicking in the round circle to the left of the particular answer. It'll only be one choice you can make, but we'd welcome your input, your feedback in this sense as well. It will help us as a group to understand if we're looking to influence funding in the right way and towards the right kind of people. and stressing particular issues that we know are prevalent across the region. So it'll be interesting to see your thoughts and feelings on that, as much as a tick on a screen can be a feeling. But Amy, are we at the point we can share some results there?
I will just give it another minute. We're about halfway there.
Yeah, no worries. So please just indicate in the answer you feel is most pressing, I guess, in terms of where we might use that funding alongside the Skills Advisory Panel and DSP members and wider stakeholders. Okay. And hopefully you should be able to just click in that circle. I saw an answer earlier about, or a question earlier about how I vote, but yeah. And are we okay to share? Brilliant. Thanks, Amy. And again, perhaps no surprise, bearing in mind your answers to the first question, you know, that whole piece about people that are, well, were excluded before COVID hit, let alone now this situation's worn on. One of the things our inclusion group will mention is about a couple of things they've done already in quick time around that group of those that are being threatened with additional exclusion or are facing it already. But then second to that, obviously young people, and again, Aj and Murray, who will talk from the point of view of the education working group about their plans and how they're going to move forward as a group there. So as I say, we'll share those results in after the event alongside the recording as well. So thank you ever so much. So really that leaves me now just to start handing on to those working group leads. I'll be looking at the Q&A panel and I'll either be answering as we go or at the end when we do a more extended Q&A session. But for now, I'm going to hand on to our first speakers, who are Murray Foster from the Digital South End Working Group, and lots more besides, and Aj Sharman from STEM Learning, who lead our education group. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me clearly now, and I hope you can see the slides. That's always a good start because I'm working blind here with it, whether you can see this or not. So good afternoon. So I'm Aj Sharman. I work for an organization called STEM Learning, work for a not-for-profit organization that supports, on behalf of DFE, the Department for Education, continuing professional development support for teachers across computing and science. We also work closely with UKRI to deliver the flagship STEM Ambassadors program on behalf of government. And we have over 33 science learning partnerships, 19 STEM Ambassador hubs, and 40 computing hubs across the country. I'm going to hand you over to my chair, Murray Foster, who will tell his background too.
Hi, hope you can hear me. I'm Murray Foster, and my current involvement is Chairman of the South End Business Partnership, and also, as being said earlier, Chairman of the Digital South End Working Group. And that gives me a link into the LET, as I have a seat on the Opportunity South Essex Board. It's important to also mention a link into education, and I'm Chairman of a Multi-Academy Trust and a Teaching School Alliance, and one of the schools within in the group, Westcliff High School for Girls, actually we was designated one of England's new National Centre for Computing Education Hubs. So that's me, and perhaps we'll get on now to looking at what may be some of the initial focuses of our working group. Okay, you'll see from the slide, these actually purely representing what, as co-chairs, we feel may be some initial ideas for our working group members to consider when we meet. I'll leave you to read through them rather than me reading them out. These will probably be refined and added to, and I'm very conscious also that we want to be what I would call an action-orientated group, providing added value, not just a talking shop. We're very much, as co-chairs, wanting to make sure we avoid sort of reinventing the wheel. Ideally, identifying gaps is important, new initiatives and new collaborations. But it also may equally involve, we feel, looking at what is working across the LEP, and it may be that an individual initiative in a certain part of the big let that we have is working well and might actually merit consideration being rolled out elsewhere. So we're looking at that as well, we feel. Other focuses will obviously have to be taken into account what's said earlier, actually in the introductions, about the experiences and the impact of COVID-19. We're also looking at the implications and, shall we say, the opportunities of leaving the EU. I think it's fair to say, going back to COVID, that this will unfortunately result in what is anticipated to be a lower level of job opportunities and apprenticeships for our young people. So that's going to be something very much in our minds. And also the other challenge as a result of, say, furloughing, etc., will be that the existing workforce may have to undergo a greater deal of retraining than it ever has done before. So that's going to be another key focus. But let's now go over and look at the terms of reference.
So wonderful. In this wonderful double act, I thought what both Murray and I tried to do here initially is to set some draft terms of reference for the working group. And I use the word draft appropriately here because we have our inaugural meeting of the support to schools to ensure students leave with the digital skills they require for the world of work working group coming up very shortly. So the terms of reference are as follows, really: increasing the digital capability needed by students for the future by understanding the regional need through rigorous evidence base. And I think that's really, that first bullet point is very important here. And I won't go through all of them in parrot fashion, but I think what's really important is to reiterate that our intention is to understand current practice, promote and support existing programs relevant to digital and tech, but identify gaps where necessary. We're looking at current impact, reach, and outcomes to consider future needs. And we then want to consider working closely with Jim and the team at DSP, and of course the Southeast LEP, consider actions and proposals where appropriate to looking at possible funding opportunities. So this is a draft terms of reference, but I think it's a really good step forward. And I think at our inaugural meeting with our working group members, we'll be able to hone this down even further and actually proceed quite quickly. And I'll hand you back to Murray at this moment in time to talk about the membership of the group.
Indeed, I mean, we're delighted really, and I know it's been said earlier on in this meeting about the level of interest and people wanting to join. And ironically, it's created a problem, but it's a nice problem to have at the end of the day, because we do want representatives from employers, education, FEHE, and not-for-profit and other relevant professional bodies where possible. So given the level of interest we have, this slide sort of gives you an idea of the spread that we are embracing. But I have to say that there will be at least another 10 organisations that are not listed up there that will be involved. So we're ending up with a far bigger working group than we originally envisaged. And in all, I think it will be near to a couple of dozen. So, and we're also very mindful, actually, the fact, the size of the LEP geography, that we wanted to make sure that there was some representation across that big geographic patch. But we wanted, nevertheless, to be getting the right people involved who can help us to move things forward, which is very important. So hopefully this slide gives you that flavour. And it's very important that, of course, we do embrace industry, charities, as well as schools, colleges, because these are all critical to addressing our future needs. So, and now we'll move on to some initial progress.
Thanks, Murray. Yeah, so we've had some really positive early discussions and activities that are already happening on the ground prior to the establishment of the DSP steering group. Just to give you a picture, and it's delightful that we've got a member from Huawei here online today. We've been assisting Huawei, for example, with their future white paper on how they might be able to support young people around the whole tech and digital skills agenda. we're in huge discussions at the moment across with various industry and employers around the whole virtual work experience. It clearly is a need that's coming up right across not just the Southeast, on a national basis, really, how we support young people in schools and colleges, but actually beyond, potentially, with virtual work experience opportunities. We've been talking to organizations around a digital skills academy and supporting this immersive approach to 3D and digital skills. We're actively involved, not just STEM learning, but with DCS and the Raspberry Pi Foundation, with the National Centre for Computing Education. I mean, currently we've had over 8,000 teachers nationally involved in continuing professional development. So it really is a very important area of teacher CPD. And just to note right at the bottom before I finish, that our inaugural working group will be on the 6th of July. So a lot of activity has been going on already. It's great working with Murray to really push this one forward. My thanks, I should say, right at the end, to those people who have come forward from industry and organizations to volunteer to help us really drive this really important agenda forward. So I hand you back to Jim.
Thanks, Aj. Thanks very much. We just had one question, Aj and Murray, from Paula Hornet. In terms of representation from independent training providers. Now, if I'm honest, I can't remember the list from the volunteer sign-ups, and it may be difficult for you to answer right now, but is it something you can answer, or can we go back to Paula at a later stage?
I think I might need to go back to Paula at a later stage, actually, if that's okay. I think Murray and I, was quite a long list, as you know, Jim, and so I can't remember exactly everyone individually, but happy to take that offline.
Yeah, great, thanks. Paula, we'll come back to you on that one. So thanks ever so much to both Murray and AJ, or Aj, sorry. That was really helpful, and as was indicated by your answers to the polls previously, you know, this is something that's high on the list and includes, as has been mentioned, working with FE partners, with HE partners, as well as those in schools, whether they are in CCE schools or not. So thank you so much. One of our other priorities, as has been shown on the screen, is that around alignment between education and industry, something that our respective colleges, training providers, universities have been doing for time immemorial. You know, that's what they're about. And obviously that's been even more challenging over the last few weeks, but they've been doing an amazing job, to a man or woman. So in that area, we have a lead for that particular group, focusing on that alignment, and I'm going to hand over to Olivia Suleiman from South Essex College.
Good afternoon, everybody. Right, I'm just going to share my screen so you can see the slide deck I put together. I can't share. Amy?
Yep, you should be able to.
Perfect. Here we go. Right. Okay. So just tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Olivia. I am the commercial manager at South Essex College. So I run a commercial training provider focusing on all sorts of skills for industry, and I also do a lot of these strategic employer engagements, so really digging into what employers across the whole LEP region need and want in terms of their skills agenda, how that can be best serviced. So tying what education can provide to the needs of employers is something I'm incredibly passionate about and have been doing for a few years now. So I'm hoping that we can actually see some real, push on the digital skills arena that, to some extent has been neglected, with the focus on, more traditional vocational careers like trade and engineering. So what's the overview of the work stream? So really, in some ways it has a lot of alignment with Murray and AJ's work stream, but it's really focusing on, industry, what it needs in short, medium and long term, support their business growth. So what does that skills and training provision look like? Is it fit for purpose? Does it take a reskill, an adult reskilling, or a learner who's various points in their education progress? Does it support them getting to where industry needs them to be? much broader focus than just digital sector. Digital impacts a huge amount of different industries these days. It's why we've got representation from engineering, from construction, as they increasingly move into automated manufacturing via off-site construction. We want to look at innovative solutions, so maximizing the use of funding and crucially the industry support. One of the things that I've developed within South Essex colleges is industrial partnerships, and these aren't alien to all colleges, but it's really about what resources could we put in place potentially to help colleges form those and manage them effectively and get the most out of what that relationship with industry. We also want to look at qualifications. Qualifications can sometimes be a little bit static, in need of a refresh and an update. So again, we want to ask the question to industry, are these qualifications delivering the bang for the buck? And we've got some new stuff in the pipeline as well in regards to T-levels. So again, how do we maximize the efficiency of that and deliver the end product of the learner to industry in a ready format? So these are the key questions. Are they fit for purpose? Existing qualifications, are they future proof? Some of these digital technologies are moving at a rate of knots, and what was projected a few years ago is now out of date, and that's the rate of change that we live in. So how do we make the qualifications future proof? How do we build in a platform that a learner or a retraining adult has foundation knowledge that can be built upon and map to the direction the industry is going in a 5, 10, 15-year plan? And how accessible are they? Do they need vast amounts of prerequisites? What barriers could that pose to reskill, upskill, and retrain? Are the pathways in place to move people up the skills ladder? So how do we take somebody who's left school in an industry at a tangent, move them into another digital role? Is that training available? Does it exist? Does it do what industry needs to do to get them into some of these roles that are hugely in demand? Can educational institutions deliver to the standards that's needed? So for some of you in the FE sector will know that delivering to what industry wants can sometimes be a challenge, particularly when those industries are very much at the bleeding edge of developments in their sector. So what do we need to do? How do we do that? And that comes back to potential for industrial partnerships. We also want to look at the sectors that are growing in the region. So what does that labour market intelligence look like? Going back to the poll, one of the key concerns is obviously around furloughed staff and potential redundancies. So, how does that transition take place? Okay, and how do we transition a workforce into what industry needs it to be, given the changes that have taken place as a result of COVID and obviously challenge of Brexit as well. So in terms of the working group itself, lots and lots of interest in joining. Thank you so much. I think we had about 45 applicants. Had to bring that down a little bit, just so the meetings are manageable. So we've kind of put it to a final working group of 20. I've really kind of gone through that list with a fine tooth comb to get as good a split as I can across industry and education, making sure we've got representative samples of those. Industry, really broad selection, everything from say off-site construction through to engineering, games design, software design, healthcare. And on the education side, really spanning all the way from some non-profits doing some great work with young people through FE and up into HE as well. So I'm hoping that we've got enough people there to kind of span that gap. We've also got an awarding body involved in the working group as well. So again, that's something that's really key. And obviously, when it comes to looking at qualifications, awarding bodies are going to need to be brought in as necessary to have those conversations and inform how we progress that. So this is the list of people I've invited. So my apologies if so you haven't been included in this. If you've got a real passion to kind of input to this, please do get in contact with me. Happy to see where we could best fit your involvement. This was just kind of the logical group to whittle it down to. So thank you to everybody for putting your names forwards and volunteering. So we're going to set up the initial meeting of the working groups, take place on the 14th of July via Teams. So invites will be sent out following this webinar. And say any suggestions, comments, projects that you feel that this working group could assist with, that you might be working on in the background, any connectivity that could take place. So, if you're in discussions with, a major employer or a major project, or even something on a local level, and you think there's something that we could add value to, please do get in contact. My email's there. I'm more than happy to take your emails and see what we can do.
Thanks, Olivia. So just a couple of points off the back of that. So one is around the mention of data and the evidence. I think it is important to say, in terms of the support from the South East LEP, and particularly the skills team, of which Louise leads and is my boss. But we have within CELEP a data officer, so Vim. So these working groups will be benefiting from Vim's expertise, her knowledge around where to gather that evidence, that kind of thing, as well as working with stakeholders and partners to develop more of that. But that's a really important tool, and I hesitate to describe Vim as a tool, but she'll be a really valuable addition as part of the DSP. The only other thing was Olivia, and I may be putting you in a position that you can't achieve here, but we've talked about a potential co-lead joining you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to cover that off. So I've there's a couple of people I've approached for it, and I'm waiting for them to get back to me. One is a lady called Jade McFun, who is training officer of Berkeley Modular, so it's a spin-off of Berkeley Homes. They've built a factory in the North Fleet area, building homes in a factory, and it's very oriented around digital design, Industry 4.0. I'm hoping that she will be able to join me as co-chair. That being said, if anybody would like to, step up to the plate and put their hat in the ring, please feel free to do so. I would very much welcome the support.
Thank you. Thanks ever so much, Olivia. That's really great. Thank you. So moving on to our next working group and our next leads of that working group. So we've referenced SMEs. We know that SMEs make up, and someone may correct me, but I think it's about 97% of the select geography in terms of the makeup of businesses across our region, though we do have those bigger players, the likes of Pfizer and Leonardo and others that we know exist across our region. So we think we've got that mix in terms of our leadership group here, and just between our chairs, even between Melissa and Alison, represent the FSB and Pfizer. But clearly SMEs and charities are a very, very important piece to this work. And with that in mind, we're delighted to have David Taylor from DNA 6. We've got Jane Knight from Successful Mums, who are now going to take you through the update from their point of view. So I'll hand over to Jane and to David.
Right, hopefully you can hear me now. Jane, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, I'm Jane Knight from Successful Mums, and myself and David have been working hard behind the scenes to get our first event up and running as part of this partnership.
And I'm David Taylor from DNA 6. I specialise in helping organisations to communicate in an increasingly digital world. Jane.
Okay, so I think what we wanted to do is talk about our progress to date. The good news really I'd just like to kick off with is we're actually running an online event on the 9th of July. So if you haven't booked your place, please make sure you do. At the last count, we're actually at 100. I think it was 118 or 120 people have registered. So we're really thrilled, and really that's off the back of our stay visible, stay viable, and stay profitable aim to support businesses and individuals with their digital skills.
I think just to pick up on what Jane's been talking about, it's increasingly clear, certainly during lockdown and the implications of coronavirus, that increasingly businesses are having to digitize now, and they're having to communicate in very, very different ways. So this SME working group has become even more important. So we've been tasked with 3 key aims as a working group. First one is around assessment. We want to find out what the digital skills levels of people across the region are using health checks and surveys. And Jane, did you want to pick up? We're going to try and poll during the event, aren't we, to try and find out knowledge levels of people attending?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that is key, you can run an event like this, but what's really important is knowing what the skills gaps are, or basically what the headaches are of the people that are attending the online event, so we can provide the digital paracetamol. So myself and David will be running a poll during the start of the event, and really that's to get some insight to, you know, do they understand about algorithms, or how to use Instagram, or how to use Trello or Slack. I think the word digital skills is branded around, and it's huge, isn't it? I mean, there's so many compartments within the word digital skills. So we really want to get an idea through our poll around, you know, what people are thinking about when they talk about they need digital skills support. And so once we've gathered that data, obviously our guest speakers, the event, and moving forward, we've got that intelligence so we can make sure we're providing the right support and training.
And so that leads us nicely onto education. The second key aim, which is to fill in the knowledge gaps of individuals and businesses using events, training, courses, but also it's about retraining staff to make them more digitally active. It's what is also becoming very, very clear as a result of lockdown is that many businesses have been forced to work virtually, and many of their staff and their teams have really, really struggled to try and adapt to working from home and to using some of the things that Jane just talked about. So I think education is an absolutely vital area. I mean, clearly we've got other working groups which are looking solely at education. I think one of the key things around the digital skills partnerships for me is that there is always going to be a lot of overlaps between the different elements. And that's why we all are going to be working together as a team. The final one is around diversity, and that's making sure that as wide a group of people have access to digital skills and get to use them within the workplace. Now, with that in mind, we have a working group. We have a working group of around 25 people drawn from a whole range of organisations right across the Southeast. We will be having our first meeting on the 15th of July. So that's going to be, so we've already got 2 key events taking place this coming month. And on the 15th, hopefully, we will also be able to judge the results of the event, how many people attended, what was the result of the polls, etc. And we will be feeding all of that information, all the information from the working group and any other events that we run into a strategy. And our goal is to deliver a strategy by the beginning of September. And that strategy will look at how SMEs across the Southeast can take advantage of digital skills to make sure that their businesses thrive in this very uncertain world we're moving into. But we've also got some other progress. And Jane, did you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're partnering. We've got 6 guest speakers covering a range of different subjects, different digital subjects. And just to touch on those, so you can see sort of the broad range. We've got Ben, who's talking about understanding digital advertising. We've also got Damon Corbett, who's coming along, and he's talking about how to create a digital culture, because I think where we are working digitally and where this is the future. It's about getting one's team on board and people not being afraid, people recognizing that the digital skills, whatever that looks like for your business, should make your life easier and make the business more efficient. We've also got Dr. Audrey Gonchard speaking about data protection, so that's really useful and sits really nicely with the topics we want to discuss. I will be talking about online and traditional networking and how that can be really useful for digital skills. And we've got the fantastic Lucy, who's going to be talking about content creation. So that's more across the social media platforms. And whether you need to be on all these social media platforms, obviously it's dependent on where your customers are, where you want your branding to be. So you don't necessarily have to be on all of them unless you really want to be on, what is there now? We've got TikTok, some people are using that in their business, but it's not for everybody. But obviously we've got the LinkedIns, the Facebook, Instagram and Twitter as well. And then we've got Paul Obi, who's going to be talking about business strategy and digital strategy as well.
So excellent lineup, and it's a great marker to show that the Digital Skills Partnership is active, and we want to use it to kick off a whole range of other events. But we've also done quite a lot of other things. So we've partnered with Google to have a number of digital garage events. Those have taken place in Colchester, Thurrock, Braintree, Basildon, Ebbsfleet, East Sussex College and Medway. Attendees have benefited from sessions around CV writing, personal online branding and digital marketing. We've also worked with Facebook, Braintree District Council to have Facebook digital skills sessions. We worked with 360 to have a webinar around tourism and hospitality sector businesses, helping them for, well, it's been an absolute calamity, coronavirus, for them. It's helping them prepare for that new normal. We're also working with Digital Boost, which is providing expert advice to SMEs and charities across the country. The great news for us is that Select have decided to put 2 million into a skills fund, 1 million into business support and another 1 million into existing sector support fund. So there's a real, there is obviously funding out there, and there's a real desire by government to help SMEs across the Southeast. As I said, I think Murray may have said it earlier, we're facing a sort of a unique situation. We've got the aftermath of coronavirus. We've got whatever's going to happen with Brexit, whether that could be incredibly positive, we don't know, or incredibly negative, we don't know. We've also got the challenge of dealing with climate change and artificial intelligence. It's a really, really fast changing world. So it's vital that we help businesses adapt to that world. So huge amount of activity going on. But what do we need from you? Jane, did you just want to pick up on this?
Yeah, so I think from the group, what we're looking for really is where you have identified with the people you're working with, or from yourself as well, the data or the digital skills that you believe you or your team or your colleagues are lacking, and what that looks like in terms of training. Because if it is I don't know if it's something like using Slack, so an organisational digital tool that will bring all the team together, or if it's more about raising your brand on Twitter or on Instagram, depending on what your business service or product is, then we need to know so we can ensure that we can put that training on. And I suppose linked to one of myself and David's aims here, picking up on number 3 around diversity, I suppose that's where my experience can really help in terms of the women returners. Having supported thousands of women returners back to work or to start a business, I've got sort of real insight to where the gaps are there, the training that they are able to do. And then of course we can connect these people with these women with local employers. So we already have some insight, but we need to build on that so we know what training we need to be offering moving forward. So
in terms of other things we're looking for, we want, as I said, we're trying to create a working strategy. It's a meaningful strategy which can actually practically help the thousands of SMEs across the region, as Alison talked about earlier. So we're looking for as much insight and data around digital skills or lack of them. We're looking at case studies of people or organizations who are adapting to a digital world. And the great thing about the last few weeks is that there have been lots of businesses, whilst many thousands would have been significantly hampered by it, there'll be lots and lots who've actually profited and it changed. We also want to grow a real online community around the Digital Skills Partnership. We mentioned earlier about a hashtag, DSPSE. We want that to be a rallying call for anyone who's looking around digital skills across the region. And of course, do help spread the word about our event on the 9th, because the more people can attend, not only do they get the advantage of getting a free education and training from some really good speakers, but also we end up getting some really valuable insight, which we can then feed back into the strategy and then take forward.
Yeah, and
I think that's all from me. Jane?
I was just going to say, obviously the event's on the 9th, as well as the training through the guest speakers we can offer. It's also a really good sort of networking opportunity, and to find out the other employers and the other people that are looking for support. So it's great networking as well. We can't, I don't think we're providing coffee or croissants, are we, David? But it should be a really, really good event.
Yeah, I don't think there's a tool in Zoom to do that. We're looking at it. It would be quite good if we could do it, but yeah, we'll try. So Jane and I are going to try and do our best, Mel and Alan from Radio 2, to keep the thing moving along and jollying it. But we're looking forward to it. We've got a great team. We're a great working group. Fantastic things going on, and we're looking forward to the future. Jim, I'll hand back over to you.
Thanks very much, both of you. Thank you. One of the questions that's come up on the Q&A facility here is one from Mike Appleby, and it's sort of been referenced as well by Ian Noble from the Chambers of Commerce. It's a question we'll pick up at the end, and perhaps David and Jane will help me answer that. But on that note, we have a third and final question to ask of attendees. It's very much in that ballpark, and again goes back to the sort of evidence and data we'll be gathering, and that Jane and David will be gathering to a greater extent at their event on the 9th. I know to all attendees that my very simplistic way of writing a question doesn't necessarily give us, the detail behind this that we know is required. But certainly from the point of view of organisations attending today, it would just be useful for us and for leads and co-chairs to understand the answer to this question. So just thinking about the organisation you personally represent, and I know that some of your organisations actively support organisations to improve and identify their digital skills. So yes, if you have a moment, if you can just answer one of those three answers, just by clicking in the circle to the left of those. So one is around, we have identified, we're a forward-thinking organisation. We've identified and addressed our digital skills gaps, and already we're seeing the benefit in terms of productivity and efficiency and all that kind of thing, and health and well-being as well. We've identified our gaps, but don't know how to address them. That's the second option there. And then the third option, we know we have gaps, but have not identified exactly what they are. And I think that sort of calls to Mike and to Ian's comments and questions today. So I'll just give that another moment before we see the results. And Amy, when you're ready to share, if you can just share the results back with us.
Just while that's taking place, it's worth saying that we're going to have 12 questions at the start of the event, and that will be covering a whole broad range of areas, similar to what's up here now. Perfect, thank you. And looking, I'm delighted to say that what we have today attending the session is a very forward-thinking, digitally skilled set of organisations, because clearly with 69% of you having identified and addressed or addressed in part those gaps that exist,
that's really good to hear. For the remaining, 30% of you, that's something we could potentially, as a digital skills partnership, help you do, and to find those solutions, because we know there's lots about, and James Maltby, who'll talk around the digital skills prospectus, I'm sure will reference that sort of abundance of materials out there and support from various organisations. So thanks ever so much. So we're going to move on now to the next working group, and it's been highlighted in 2 questions, the importance around those that are increasingly finding themselves digitally excluded. Again, we're delighted to have Will Pickford from Thurrock Council, Vice Principal at Thurrock Adult Community College. Although I've got that wrong in the past, so Will, please correct me if that's the case. And Rona Draver, who joined us most recently from East Sussex Council, but particularly the library service there. So I'll hand over to both Will and to Rona. Thank you.
Excellent. Can I just have confirmation that my screen sharing is working?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, I'm Will Pickford from Thurrock Council. I work for the Education and Skills Directorate. So firstly this afternoon I'm going to share our progress towards developing a digital inclusion manifesto for the South East. Then my co-chair Rona will update you on the project group progress so far. In 2015, the UK signed up to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals alongside all the other countries in the UN. These are often known as global goals. These goals are to end poverty, protect the planet, and improve the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. Yet in the global context, the UK still lags behind many other G20 countries in terms of inequality. This inequality comes both in access to fast broadband and the digital skills of its citizens. Despite being one of the most prosperous areas in our country, this is still unfortunately true of our Southeast LEP region. Here are some of the headline figures that Jim shared with you last time. In an increasingly digital age, those who are not engaging effectively with the digital world are at risk of being left behind. Technological change means that digital skills are increasingly important for connecting with others, accessing information and services, and meeting the changing demands of the workplace and economy. This is leading to a digital divide between those who have access to information and communications and those who do not, giving rise to inequalities in access to opportunities, knowledge, services, and goods. So who are the most disadvantaged? In particular, we know that a higher percentage of women are digitally disengaged compared to men. Digital disengagement is largest amongst those over 65. Over the age of 75, this figure rises significantly, with this age group accounting for over 50% of all adult disengagement. In 2017, 56% of adult internet non-users were disabled, much higher than the proportion of disabled adults in the UK population, which is approximately 22%. Amongst young people, between the ages of 16 and 24, 60% were disabled. So why is this so important? We know that having access to the skills to use the internet has earnings benefits. Acquiring good digital skills can lead to increase in earnings of between 3 and 10%. Being able to use the internet improves the chances of finding work for someone who is unemployed and increases the likelihood that someone who is inactive will look for work. Shopping online has been found to be 13% cheaper on average than shopping in store. basic digital skills can enable people to connect and communicate with family, friends, and the community 14% more frequently. And time saved by accessing government services and banking online rather than in person is estimated to be about 30 minutes per transaction. All of those stats comes from pre-lockdown. So this project then will look at how to tackle the Southeast digital divide. We have a working manifesto to fight injustice and equality in the Southeast region through ensuring all of our citizens have the access and the skills required to realise the benefits of digital technologies. As Sir Tim Berners-Lee recently wrote in an article for The Guardian, COVID-19 has reinforced what we already knew. The internet is lockdown life for millions in the UK, but millions more still can't get online, and that's fundamentally unfair. Demand action from your government to make universal internet connectivity a priority. In our region, our rallying call is 0% digital exclusion. It will include 0% connection and device poverty and 100% of our population with the digital skills that they need. I'm now going to hand over to Rona, who will update you with our progress to date.
Thank you, Will. So as Will said, our vision is universal minimum digital skills level for everyone. And we have 3 themes that we're exploring as part of our group: sharing stories, identifying and accessing funding opportunities, and ensuring representation. Our first theme is access for all. And I should say, first of all, that as part of my role as a senior manager in East Sussex Library Service, I knew that when the libraries across the South East closed for lockdown, thousands of people would have become digitally excluded who were relying on libraries for their internet or Wi-Fi connections. So it is something really dear to my heart. The second of our aims is to support charities to support vulnerable residents. And we've already mentioned in previous presentations how important the work of charities is in supporting digital inclusion. And then the third aim is around improving training, education, careers advice and information, which is obviously another really important aspect of digital inclusion. See the next slide, Will. Thank you. So just to say that we have held the first meeting for our Preventing Digital Exclusion group. We held the first meeting last week, and I think we had about 25 people attending with a really interesting mix of experience and strengths, which was great. We've decided that as there are 3 distinct strands for this group, that we'd like to split into subgroups so that each subgroup can focus particularly on one area. And we've already had 16 people sign up for the 3 strands. And thankfully, we've had volunteers to lead each of those strands, which is great. Thank you very much for that. But we do have space, definitely, for the second strand in particular, which is around supporting charities. So if you know of anyone or you yourself would like to contribute to that charity strand, please do get in touch with either Will or I. There's already been a lot of very good progress in terms of preventing digital exclusion. So we've had donations from Pfizer and Discovery Park, and we're looking to work with Good Things Foundation and Devices.now to provide devices and connectivity for people, which is great. We've signed up to provide courses for 10,000 people who are unemployed, furloughed, or at risk of redundancy, and that's with Coursera, who provide a really wide range of courses to support employment and employability. We're also waiting to hear for an announcement, a national announcement, which may come in the next few weeks from the BBC, around encouraging people to donate old or unused devices. And we'll look to see if we can provide some kind of regional structure to work with the BBC on that initiative. And we're also looking to work with regional partners to deliver a series of webinars for charities to help them develop their digital skills and to help them develop the skills of the volunteers that they work with. So that as my other colleagues have said, there's already lots of good progress being made on this strand, and we're really excited to work with the people in our subgroups to develop even more over the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
both. Sorry. Thank you. That was really great. Thank you. So it's evidence, I guess, that the inclusion and some of the comments within the Q&A have been exactly along these lines. So I'm hoping for those people that have asked that question, particularly around access, that you get the sense that, you know, it sits very, very high for Rona and for Will and the group as a whole. Just to elaborate a little in terms of those donations. So Rona and Will's group have agreed. We're just waiting on final sign-off, so that's why we haven't been able to share news fully just yet. But the South East DSP is contributing a donation to Devices.now and Good Things, as Rona said. And I'm sure Melissa will elaborate a little more on Pfizer's contribution to that as she closes the event. But if we can get, and we have done, Pfizer to contribute, Discovery Park also to contribute, then clearly we will look to press other organisations that are able to give in that way across the South East. So that's a really good piece of work. As is the bit about Coursera. It's important just to add, we're awaiting the curation element of their 3,800 courses available online. It will be available, each course and certification will be available to people who are unemployed, people who are furloughed, or those facing the threat of redundancy at no cost, as long as individuals complete by the 31st of December, which doesn't give much time. But the more people we can encourage that way, the better negotiation skills as a DSP for next year with Coursera and having that content. The last point I wanted to make on that, because I've made it a couple of meetings in the last week or so, because I'm conscious we'll have a number of providers, FE, HE, on the line, as it were. We know full well that we need to make sure that the local offer is represented in that same space as Coursera's offer. So we'll be working with FE university partners across the region to make sure that's the case. So I just wanted to make that clear, and I hope that's helpful. So moving on then, thank you ever so much, Rona, and to Will. We'll now move on to our next working group, and this is for me now to hand on to James. Now, James Maltby from Save the Children can tell you what a difficult time he's had in the last few months, particularly speaking. But James kindly is leading a working group that's focusing around the production of a digital skills prospectus. James, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, everyone. I won't share my full story of my last couple of months. I'm sure everyone's quite difficult lockdown. Hopefully, everyone can see my screen here. What I wanted to talk to you about, last but not least, is their digital skills prospectus. It was quite interesting to me, actually, at the beginning when we did the poll of the priority areas, that this actually was the lowest. And you know what? I'm not entirely surprised, because when we were initially coming up with our priority areas for the partnership, this wasn't really one of the core priority areas. It was seen more as something that would support all the different priority areas in their work and maybe enable some of the work that they were doing, and also be something that may be sustainable beyond the life of the partnership. So this was something, back to what Alison was saying at the beginning, something that was going to come later in the partnership's work rather than at the very, very beginning. But I'm really, really keen to talk about it now and some of our vision. As Jim has said, my name's James, and I'm from Save the Children, and I'm going to be co-leading this project with Dan Williams from Ginger Nut Media, who I believe is actually observing on this call at the moment. And if I just move my slide on a little bit. So as Will and Rona were talking about, access to quality digital skills has been identified as a common problem for businesses and job seekers in the South East. But a major challenge is actually just the sheer abundance of courses and qualifications available without much actual guidance. Mike was saying earlier in the Q&A about businesses and job seekers not knowing what they don't know. And that's kind of a common problem. We've got this vast amount of digital resources out there, but actually people don't know necessarily what they need to access a lot of the time. There's a lot of national and global options out there, or we've spoken before about the Government Skills Toolkit, which is a fantastic platform that's been developed centrally, and mentioned Coursera, the project we're working with Coursera about curating quite a lot of content and making that available for people for free. But that is a huge amount of content, and it's not very localized to the needs of our region, and it doesn't really have any links to any of our local businesses and providers as well. So what we're really hoping to do is to develop a prospectus app that will allow us to showcase the region's training providers and our local learning opportunities in order to try and support our businesses and job seekers to develop these appropriate digital skills. And as part of that, a lot of the work of the other working groups I can see forming a part of this prospectus as well. So something that will enable a lot of the work across the whole partnership. We're also hoping, as I said, that the activities will be sustainable beyond the life of the partnership. So this is something that will hopefully live on beyond the partnership's fundings left as a really permanent output of all the work we're doing at the moment. So if I just break down the sort of current vision of the digital skills prospectus, what is the digital skills prospectus? So firstly, it is a created list of digital skills resources for the region. I think the key thing is the creation aspect of this. It's not just an endless list of digital skills resources. It is something that's very much, as a working group, we're going to decide what are the relevant resources for people right now in COVID-19, and how do they link in with the needs of the region. Content from local providers and offerings is going to be a key emphasis of this in terms of trying to support the local businesses, local providers, local opportunities, local events is going to be a key part of this. And this is probably quite an essential part of our offering as a regional DSP, that we do offer that regional rather than national focus. But then again, we don't want to miss out the link to the national toolkit and the global catalogues that are available and all the training resources out there. It's really important to have those links as well. We want to make it really easy to search by locality and by career pathway. So that's where the curation is going to be a really important aspect of this, so people can understand from a particular career pathway, particular locality, what skills courses available, what opportunities available, and give them some guidance about what they could be following in terms of an actual learning pathway. We really hope to do a lot of community source content. It would be quite a huge job for us to source all of this content ourselves, but there's an opportunity to actually use the power of the internet to source a lot of this community source, this content on an ongoing basis and make it quite sustainable. And finally, what this is really going to look like is it's initially going to be a web-based app, but there's a real possibility for a mobile app in the future. But I think we're keen at the moment to make it as accessible as possible to begin with. So in order to get something up and running, start with a web app, and in the future, we'll sort of hopefully develop that into a mobile-based app in the future. So in terms of the next stages of this, as I said, I see this as something that's likely to be completely fleshed out by the end of the partnerships program, but certainly something we want to get going with at the moment to support the working groups. We're just really looking for any expression of interest from anyone who's interested in helping us with this curation process. We really do want to start developing a first edition of the prospectus to see what opportunities are out there. We're really, really keen to hear from local training providers. If they've got any useful resources, any events, anything, please get in touch, because it'd be really good to get the local emphasis in there from the very, very start. And thank you to everyone who's already volunteered. I've got a list of volunteers already. Apologies we haven't organised a first meetup yet, but we're going to send a follow-up email following this meeting to discuss how actually you can get involved in that. But in the meantime, please feel free to post in the Q&A any questions to myself or the rest of the working groups. So on that note, nice, short and sweet from me. I think I'm going to hand back over to Jim, and I think we're going straight into the Q&A session now.
Thanks, James. Yeah, so that's the plan, and you know, going through the questions, and I understand my audio is a little bit crackly, I think, so apologies for that. That's my don't use Virgin. Hopefully Virgin aren't on the call here today. Anyway, so we're going to go. I've only got 4 questions that I've particularly picked out, but one of them I'm going to direct to David, because I think David will particularly answer this one himself. So the questions come in a couple of forms, David, and I mentioned it before. So Mike Appleby and Ian Noble have asked about that problem that business do not necessarily know what digital skills they lack, and therefore what further training might help them. You've touched upon digital health checks and the support that the partnership could give. I just wondered if you wanted to expand upon an answer there.
Absolutely. I think the first thing I would say to any business now is there is no such thing as business as usual and staying where you are and assuming everything's going to be fine. I think if businesses take the view that the world is changing, therefore their business needs to change. So if they've got at least a thirst for knowledge or trying to find out something new. So if they do go along to something like the event we're running, and they do a simple quiz or at least test their knowledge. I mean, again, some businesses may, if they don't know what they don't know, it's worth going along, trying to learn some new information. And if they do the online quiz, say if they ask them the questions at the event on the 9th, and it turns out they get a very low score, it tells them what they don't know. And I think the unfortunate truth, and I think it's been already highlighted today, Lloyd's have done a series of business indexes, digital business indexes over the last few years, and the amount of businesses across the country who don't have digital skills is just enormous. So I think I would almost say that if a business assumes it doesn't have digital skills, the worst can happen is that they might be pleasantly surprised and realize that they know more than they thought. But if they do go along to some of the events that the DSP will be running, then they've got a really good opportunity to test their knowledge and see where the gaps are. I mean, whatever happens, no business will ever have perfect knowledge and perfect understanding. So it's always worth trying to learn new skills. Sorry, long answer.
No, thanks, David. The second question, so this is really for Aj and for Murray. It's Munya asked the question about engaging primary schools. I'm not sure we necessarily mentioned them in your presentation, but I'm sure they are an important part of the puzzle.
Yeah, I can kick that one off, Jim, and Munya, let me just take any worries that you have that primary schools are off the agenda. They're very much on the agenda. The National Centre for Computing Education itself on a national basis puts a great deal of emphasis on engaging with teachers to support young people understanding about tech skills and digital skills per se. So I can assure Munya that actually primary is not off my agenda at all. In fact, when I talk about schools and colleges, I literally mean young people, probably is 5 to 19 really across the board. So no one is being omitted from this agenda. And I think Munya's comment on the chat was very much that it starts at a young age. I totally agree with him. I think if you can have inspiration, aspiration at a young age into tech and digital skills, there's every opportunity they will forward that and use that in their future careers. And even if they don't go into digital themselves as a business, the fundamental skill is there in whatever cross-sector or sector they actually enter into, because this is one thing about it's almost cross-sectorial digital skills. And I think it's important that primary schools are engaged. Murray might want to add some additional information.
Yeah, certainly being involved in the NCCE side of things and Teaching School Alliance, I would say very much that I'd echo the comments that have just been made. I'm seeing it firsthand happening. I think obviously the COVID situation has had to have a different approach and actually has been looking at more remote learning, shall we say, being available, and CPD stuff for teachers as well. So COVID has actually, in a way, triggered an alternative way of seeing how this can be delivered. But certainly, personally, as a chair of a MAT, I would say, and 75% of them are primary and junior. I totally agree that is a priority.
Thank you both. I wonder if Alison might be well placed in this question. So, Mike Appleby, going back to this point about businesses and not necessarily knowing what they need or what they don't know. it's a good question raised by Mike Appleby once again, Alison. That's how do we intend to get a message of support out to businesses and charities? Mike makes the point that while they are inquisitive, they might attend events. Sometimes they might be too busy. So I just wondered if you've got any thoughts on how do we get that message out to businesses that sometimes are going to be too busy, and charities themselves.
No, that's a good point. And I think actually looking across my screen here and thinking about all the participants, we've got to really absolutely maximise all of our own channels. So now if you look at our hashtag DSPSE, I've been tweeting about it, so have some of the other presenters. We know Twitter isn't the best way because that's for those already slightly digitally savvy. So equally, in my job, and I'm sure in lots of other jobs of the people on this call here, I'll be talking to BBC Radio Kent, I'll be trying to get our businesses onto the TV, we'll be writing press releases. So really it's a case of using all the channels all the time to spread that message and to keep that message going. We are welcoming input, support and engagement from the businesses with the knowledge, but equally we've got to get that out there to that message to those people who haven't got that digital skills knowledge. It's another big task, but we've got to use all those different channels, and that includes from word of mouth to printed press to broadcast media and to all of us within all of our networks, because between all of us here, 62 participants, we had 66 sort of at the peak of our session today. We know thousands of people between us across the whole of the Southeast and thousands of businesses and organisations. So it's really all of us collectively spreading that message and encouraging people to take up that training where they can.
Thanks, Alison. And it's worth also saying, I shouldn't be talking to individuals, but Mike, if you're out there. So there's also a proactive way of doing this, that we've talked about the funding available from CELEP and us being part of those conversations and directing that funding appropriately according to the evidence and the need and all that kind of thing. You know, we've talked in the past, ERDF, the European funding stream, you know, depending on what happens with that, and I'm getting into a whole territory I don't really know for sure. But, you know, there are specific programs where we might be engaging businesses through that with the offer of some kind of financial support, potentially, if we can get to that scenario. And if an offer of money is there, then that will always help in terms of the engagement too. I'm speaking for myself, and Louise might be thinking, what is he saying at this point? But, you know, it's another stream that we might investigate as well. So thanks, Alison. Just one other question, and it's come from Richard. Well, actually, no, we'll go back to another question before yours, Richard. This is more for Will and Rona, and I think partly has been answered in the presentation, but it was a question about that serious problem around exclusion. How can we ensure, and I guess that's the key word in terms of the question, that every student in education has a connected device, and through which working group? I think we've evidenced that's Will and Rona's group particularly. But what are your thoughts, Will or Rona, if you'd like to comment at this point on a device for every single student across the Southeast?
Yes, please, Jim.
Simple as that. Brilliant.
As that.
Yeah, I think, you know, we know, and providers on the call and colleges on the call will know about efforts of the DFE. I'm not sure where that's got to, and maybe Olivia might have some insight into that in terms of the financial support to help FE colleges secure equipment for learners. You know, again, it's a realm I'm not entirely sure of. All I can say is, and Will and Rona, I'm sure, would confirm, you know, they've mentioned about this minimum digital skills level, and part of that inevitably will be access. So we're not going to be able to promise that we get a device to every student that needs it, but we'll work with the right people to have the right kind of conversations, to influence funding as and when we can, to see that that's as high on the list as anything else around exclusion. So the last question I have, before I hand over to Melissa, our co-chair, to close today, this is from Richard, and Richard is from Citizens Online, a national organisation working very much in and around digital inclusion. Richard said, has it been proposed that we use the government's essential digital skills framework for contextualising what we mean by digital skills? I'm going to try and answer that one, only because it's a question that's come up at numerous events I've been to where people have said, but what do you mean by digital skills? And I think we all have our own interpretation of that, depending on our area of business or our area of expertise or whatever. certainly when the leads together today have talked about an overarching vision of a minimum digital skills level, it was always the government's central digital skills framework that we knew was a strong basis for that. So I can assure you, Richard, that is certainly part of the conversation in terms of articulating what digital skills means across the region. Inevitably, that framework will be a strong and important part of that. Be organisations like yours, of course, that will be keen to work with and alongside. So, have members got anything there or to add to that, or no? Okay. So, apologies if we haven't got round to every single question there. We'll be sharing a sort of a Q&A pack after the event, and obviously the recording of this will be up in those various ways as we've mentioned. But thank you again to everyone who's attending from my point of view. Thank you to all the panellists, and thank you to Alison and to Melissa. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Melissa Hannah-Brown from Pfizer to take on this closing of the event. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Can I just check you can hear me okay?
You're a little quiet, Melissa, but
I'm going to go a little bit closer and let's make sure. Apologies, I'm going to be in
brilliant.
green.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, just a big thanks to everybody here today. As Jim just said, I'm coming from Pfizer, work in Sandwich in Kent, and for the pharma sector, digital transformation is increasingly in focus, and certainly for Pfizer, it's a core element of our global corporate strategy. And in terms of digital transformation, the skills are a huge component of this, both for our current workforce, but also for the future of the whole industry. And inclusion's a really important part in that journey towards digital transformation, both for our current staff, but also for the people who will work in our sector in the future. And that's why we've been really happy and delighted to support the Good Things Foundation project and Devices.Now project that Will and Rona spoke to you about. And I was really inspired to hear that vision articulated as well so clearly about their vision for 0% digital exclusion, and also to see the feedback from everybody on the line around the importance of that as a focus area. And I guess just as a final sort of in the closing comments really is a rallying call for action here for everybody who's in the meeting today. As Jane said when she was talking, digital skills is a really broad term. It's a really broad church. And, while we're knocking on an open door right now, in terms of our asks around digital skills because of the current situation, what's really important is that we're doing the right things in the right order so that we maximise the impact for the South East community. So we really need as many of you to get involved as possible. So if you're not already involved in a work stream, please think about how you could do that. Get in touch with Jim or get in touch with the people that you've heard from today. If you're not sure whether you want to be involved in a work stream directly, doing some of the heavy lifting, but you have feedback about what you think is important, please do get in touch with Jim and he'd be really happy to take lots of calls, I'm sure. Really, if I go back to that inclusion theme, inclusion is, I guess, at the core here. For this to work and to impact our community across the South East, the partnership has to be totally inclusive, and we really do need as many organisations feeding in and being part of this so that we really can make a difference. So please do use the hashtag DSPSE, I have to be careful I don't get that wrong. Keep an eye on the website, phone up and annoy Jim and give him lots of feedback. And then just finally, really, thank you for participating. Thanks for all the feedback in the polls. We really will use that. If anything comes to mind afterwards, get in touch and give us that feedback. And finally, thank you to all the panelists. Great presentations and overviews. I'm very inspired and excited about our path forward now. Thanks to Jim for all your hard work, and to Louise for your support, and of course to Alison too. So I think with that we can probably close, say goodbye, and thank you all. Stay safe and please get engaged with us.